What's up guys, Specstar here today, excited to bring you guys another episode of Draft League 101, and we're going to be doing something real different today. Instead of talking about a theme or covering the whole topic, we're going to look specifically at one important Pokemon, Mew. And I'm going to talk about how Mew works in Draft League, talk about some of my experiences with it, what I think about it, the role it fills, what it can do, and all that. So let's dive right in. Introduction. I've got a bit of a riddle for you guys here. What's got 100 base at every stat and is basically tiny pink Jesus? Answer, Mew. Value. So here we're going to talk about the value Mew has in Draft League. In GBA tiers, it's a tier 1 every time, and it's a high-end tier 1. In point drafts, it's going to cost you, generally, with the common 120 point system, it's going to cost you about 16 to 19 points. It's usually around 1 pick. It can not be in points. Points is probably where it's least likely to be around 1 pick. But in GBA tiers and untiered, it's generally going to be around 1 pick. I would say on average, it's probably a 4th or 5th overall pick. It's going to go behind generally the things like Tapu Koko, maybe even Landorus Theory, and things like that. My personal take on its value, I consider Mew to be in a league with no unbans, in a GBA tier system or an untiered system, I consider Mew to be the second best Pokemon. Now, of course, unbans change that and all that stuff. The one Pokemon I do have above Mew is Kyurem Black. And the reason for that is because Kyurem Black, with all of its offensive versatility and the power it has, there are, I believe, no Pokemon that wall every set it can bring. Kyurem Black is just a complete nightmare to prep for. But aside from Kyurem Black, I have Mew as number 1 in a league without unbans. It's a Pokemon I've picked before very early, and I will pick again early. It's really unique. There aren't any Pokemon that really do what Mew does, and that's why I think it's worth a first round pick. Now we're going to talk about its role. Many would say that Mew's versatility means it has no specific role, and I've heard that a lot. People say it can be offensive, it can be defense equally, it doesn't have a specific role, but I disagree. I don't believe that. I think Mew has a specific role. My personal beliefs are that its offensive capabilities pale in comparison to its defensive capabilities, and using Mew offensively, while I've certainly done it before and will do it again, it's not very common that you're going to find that it contributes more being an average offensive threat versus being probably the best wall in league format. So here's how I define Mew's role. To me, I classify Mew as a versatile wall. It has a lot of versatility, but within the role of a wall. By that I mean it can be a fast wall, you can run it specially defensive, physically defensive, you can put rocks on it, hazard control, heal bell, you can set up with it, calm mind, bulk up. It's really a wall that can deal with different teams in so many different ways. Even within that role, there's not any wall in league format you'll find that in different matchups can run the different types of sets that Mew can. You're not going to find another wall with like 16 or so viable moves. Generally, you're going to find walls having about 7 or 8 viable moves, and Mew just kind of blows that out of the water. It can really do things within that defensive role nothing else can. Is Mew a good Z user? And that's a question I've seen quite a bit. And of course, there's one big factor that can change that, and that's is Munium allowed? With Munium, Mew gains a lot of offensive potential. Of course, for those who don't know, Munium turns Psychic into Genesis Supernova, which I believe has 200 base power and sets Psychic Terrain, which of course is unbelievably powerful. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it's not the strongest, like it doesn't have the most base power, but it's probably the best Z move. Well, aside from that, of course, the Omni boosters and Clangor Soul Blaze, which are just absurd, but aside from those, it's probably Genesis Supernova is the strongest. And another factor before I can answer that is, if Munium is allowed, how many Z users do you have? What are your Z rules? Generally, I would never have Mew as my only Z captain because Mew loves its item freedom. It likes being able to mix up its items. It likes being able to run leftovers, a Colbur Berry, all that fun stuff. So I wouldn't bog it down with the Z user status, but if you have multiple Z users, then maybe not anything else that really thrives on using a Z move, Mew can definitely pick up a role there. Mew's value as a versatile wall. I consider Mew the best wall in League format, as I mentioned before. The versatility it has is incredible, and it walls fast offense mons and it breaks stall, and that's what's so crucial about Mew. The fact that it has the speed it has and taunt means that other walls are not beating Mew. So Mew, there are very specific Pokemon that can deal with a wall variant of Mew because most of the fast offensive mons can't break it, and most of the defensive mons just get shit on by its taunt. That's really the beauty in this thing. And we'll show more about its sets after the PowerPoint. I'm going to go to Showdown after the PowerPoint, and I'm going to go over all of its sets it can run, all the moves it can do, all that fun stuff. League rules matter. Absolutely they do, especially when you're talking about something like Mew's value. Always know your league rules. You definitely want to know what's allowed and what isn't. Baton pass is absolutely crucial because Mew is one of the best baton passers there is. It gets Amnesia, Barrier, Swords Dance, Rock Polish, and Nasty Plot. So you can pass any stat from Mew. It can get Calm Mind and Bulk Up. It's really a good baton passer. So if stat pass is allowed, Mew really does gain value. And of course, as I talked about before, Munium Z, Mew does gain offensive potential if it can run Munium Z. It's still better defensively, but Munium Z is something that if your opponent doesn't prepare for it right, it can kind of shit on them. My personal Mew experience. I've used Mew quite a bit, actually, and I've definitely faced it quite a bit, too. Mew is a Pokemon that I like to draft. I'm going to continue drafting. I've taken it first round quite a bit, and I've had some success using it. I've never really had a season where Mew didn't contribute very much. Generally, this Pokemon is fairly consistent if you use it defensively in that role. It's good in almost any matchup just because of the versatility it has. So generally, it's not an inconsistent Pokemon. You're going to see it doing a lot of the same in many games, and that is very important because there are Pokemon like Scolipede and things that have certain matchups where they can really shine, certain matchups where they don't pick up their slack so much. But something like Mew, you're going to find it's about as consistent as really anything in Draft League. Mew Set Particulars to Showdown. And I've got my team builder up here, and let me just adjust OBS. Here we've got defensive Mews. And I'm going to start by talking about defensive Mew variants and the type of sets they can run that way. And this one I called the Manny Special. And that's because I had a friend called Manny. He was in a few leagues I was in. He liked himself some Mew, and he would draft it, and he would bring the same set every week, and it put in work every week. And that is going to be Knockoff, Taunt, Roost, and Will-O-Wisp. And the set there with the EVs is not anything specific, it's just to show that he would usually make it physically defensive, and he would always put a little bit of speed on it to make sure that his opponents had a hard time speed creeping it. Because especially with Mew, a taunt Mew, it's really crucial to not make it so easy on your opponents to creep it. Being faster than a lot of things is going to be very important for Mew, and it's one of the few walls that actually has the capability to outspeed many things. The beauty of this set is that like I mentioned, this kind of set with Taunt, it chits on walls. With Knockoff, it's gonna, and while the pairing of Knockoff and Wisp, it's gonna make sure things get chipped down. And this set really, it just kind of batters the opponent's team up to the point where things get weakened for the late game and you can kind of prepare something ready to clean. And this mon is given, I think, almost everyone in that league that where he's in and taking this a little bit of a nightmare. So the next one, we're going to look at other moves defensive Mew can run. And we're going to shine a little bit on its versatility. It gets Rocks, it gets Defog, of course Toxic, another valuable status move, Thunder Wave too, if you wanted to run that. Whirlwind, Roar, Dragon Tail, so it can phase. It can get up hazard and phase, very valuable. And then Bulk Up, Calm Mind, Heal Bell, and Infestation. And I've got the Binding Band here. This is a little bit of a fun little set I have. If you run a Binding Band and Infestation, the Binding Band's going to increase the damage that Infestation does after the primary hit. And I think it moves it to 1/6 or around that, which is actually a ton if you think about it. You're really chipping things down. So that can be really annoying to deal with. Of course, Heal Bell is a move I love. And it pairs so well with Synchronize because you can bring this thing in on a Toxic or a Wisp or something. They'll take their status back from Synchronize, and then you can just heal yourself back up. That's a little bit annoying thing to deal with. And then we've got the Vest around, which is an Assault Vest Mew set. Generally, to me, it's not as good as a Roost variant. My little Chihuahua's trying to get some attention. Here he is. Here's the little man. He's nuts. Generally, I like the Roost set over the Assault Vest set, but the Assault Vest set certainly has its matchups. You can run Drain Punch, Knockoff, Zen Headbutt, and U-Turn. I think those are kind of the primary moves you'd have. Drain Punch is, of course, great for being able to heal you back up, and Knockoff's always good on bulky attackers. Of course, the sky's the limits with these moves. You can just scroll through them and see all these things. It can be special attacking too with Vest, but generally you're going to see physical more often because it gets Drain Punch and Leech Life. You could put Facade on there if it was a status type of game. You could Boom if you wanted to. Foul Play is always potentially valuable. Liquidation can be interesting. Low Kick. Poison Jab, Power Up Punch. Quite a few options it can run with this. And Super Fang, of course, is relevant. U-Turn, Volt Switch, all that fun stuff. So many options with it. And then there's also, here I'm talking about defensive attacks. One of the beauty of this thing is you can run defensive sets and you have so many options for the attack you want to put on it. There's, of course, Knockoff, which is probably the best, and then there's Psychic, Psyshock, Drain Punch, Earthquake can be nice, some sort of fire coverage, Gunk Shot. Really, the sky's the limit. So many options there. As I think I'm getting a little repetitive in saying. Now we're going to talk about Mews that aren't strictly defensive, and what better to start with than the Munium set. And usually what you'll see is, of course, the Psychic to trigger the Genesis Supernova. You'll probably see Plot on this set. Aura Sphere is generally going to be a bring too. There's Dazzling Gleam. You could also put Flamethrower there or something like that. Sludge Wave something. Ice Beam's another possibility. This move is a lot more free than these three. You're going to see these three on a Munium set most of the time, and then this one's just kind of matchup driven, depending on what matchup you've got. And the next one we're going to look at is Other Plot, and these are just some other moves you can run on a Plot variant. Of course, you could also see the Psychic, the Aura Sphere, and it can run Nasty Plot even if it can't have Munium, of course. Its special coverage is just absolutely fantastic. Swords Dance is another very viable set. You can run Swords Dance and Drain Punch, Knockoffs, and Headbutt. That's generally the primary coverage you'll see on this thing. Of course, there are other moves that can run. Things like Fire Punch, Earthquake, all that fun stuff. Gunk Shot, maybe. You put Leech Life if you had the matchup and you wanted the health. Ice Punch, very valuable. All that stuff. And then, of course, there's Dual Dance, which can really be threatening if you're not prepared right for it and it gets setting up. And basically just what Dual Dance means, if you don't know, it means either Swords Dance and Nasty Plot coupled with a speed boosting move like Agility or Rock Polish. And the Rock Polish Nasty Plot Mew set, I think, is the most viable Dual Dance set it can run. And generally, you can see Psychic and Aura Sphere there. It could also be Dazzling Gleam or something like that. You just want to be able to hit Dark types, of course, and Steel types. Things of that nature, other Psychics. Generally, this move is a little bit matchup driven. Depends on what your opponent has and all that. And then, of course, there's the Baton Pass Mew. And this thing is really annoying, and that's why usually I don't allow stat pass in leagues, because preparing for this thing, when it can pass all these stats, it really becomes such a nightmare to deal with. You can take something like a Nasty Plot and pass it to a Beast Boost Sweeper, becomes a nightmare. You can pass Speed, if Speed Pass is allowed. A lot of leagues allow Stat Pass, but not Speed Pass. If Speed Pass is allowed, Mew becomes even better, because it's a big deal being able to pass that. We've got the Nasty Plot, the Barrier, the Rock Pulse, the Swords Dance, and of course it also gets Amnesia, so it can really pass ×2 of any boost. No problem. And the last set I'm going to look at is the Choice. And it can be Choice Band, Choice Specs, Choice Scarf. You can put Trick on it. All sorts of things it can do with this. And generally, for like a band type of variant, you'll probably see something like this with Zen Headbutt, Superpower, or Drain Punch, U-Turn, and Knockoff. With a spec set, you may see something like Psychic, Psyshock, Dazzling Gleam, Aura Sphere, maybe even Focus Blast if it needs the extra power, Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, something like that. And a Scarf set it would probably have similar moves to either the band or the specs variant. It also is more likely to have Trick than a band or a specs variant. It's a very real possibility. And there are, of course, I go on and on about all the different moves it has. Really, the sky's the limit when you're using Mew, so that's basically it. So these are the sets it can run, and that's pretty much it for the video. Those are just some of my thoughts on Mew, and of course, you're all gonna have a different opinion on it than me. You're gonna vary from me slightly to some extent, and always it's the type of player that comes into play. For me, I like a good bulky defensive set. Maybe for a different type of play style, you'll find that for you it's better off as a special attacker or something like that. But to me, Mew really fits in as a versatile wall, and I think it's the best wall in League format, and really the second best Pokemon in a league without unbans. So those are my thoughts on it. And really, I want to hear what you guys think about this. Comment below. What's your Mew experience? What Mew set do you like? How do you see Mew? How does it fit in with your playstyle? And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about Mew or Draft League in general, anything like that, comment below and I'll get you the response. And I'm generally pretty quick with that. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, and have yourselves a good night.